Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Alex, and you're listening to the Stagger Stance podcast, where I give my stagger stance on anything and everything stand-up paddleboarding. Today is actually a really fun episode, and one that I absolutely love talking about. I love talking about the topic of today's episode. It is all about self-care. I love doing self-care. I love practicing self-care. It is something that I pay a lot of attention towards when it comes to myself, and I put a lot of effort into it in all aspects. It's not like I just prioritize looking good. I actually prioritize feeling good and just all the above. I love working on my physical and my mental well-being and self-care, and I always like practicing it. So today I want to go through the physical and the mental practices that I go through, that I do to help my physical and mental health as an athlete, specifically a stand-up paddleboard athlete. I think that a lot of these can reflect on any athlete, but because I am a stand-up paddleboarder, I am going to prioritize the actions that I do that relate to stand-up paddleboarding, because a lot of them are kind of specific to stand-up paddleboarding, which we'll get into. And this is also me coming from being a woman. I know that some of these practices may be a little bit different for men, and I understand that. That's totally chill, totally cool. So I'm coming into this conversation in this perspective as a woman, and these are things that I do specifically as a woman. I mean, you can do a lot of these things as men, but if during this episode you're like, well, I don't do that, I'm a man, well then yeah, because I'm not a man, so obviously I'm not going to be speaking on your behalf. So I first want to start with explaining why I think self-care is super important, for me at least. Like I said before, I have found so much joy in taking care of myself and prioritizing my health, my physical and my mental health, and I found that not taking care of both these things directly relates to my stand-up paddleboarding, and if I let go of them, if I let go of these practices, I found that it has a negative influence, and if I am keeping up with these practices and being consistent and disciplined with these things, I found that there is such a positive influence on my stand-up paddleboarding. Having a healthy mind and a healthy body is really, really good for sports. They both work together, and you can't have one without the other. And also, it is kind of proven that your mental health is a lot more important than your physical health in the world of sports, because when you have bad mental health, it directly reflects your physical health. Obviously, with these practices, I am never always doing them. I'm never 100% consistent. It does take a lot of effort to prioritize them and to do them consistently and to constantly be thinking about them. Not constantly be thinking about them, but just be like actively aware of what you have to do or what you want to do. So that's just my little disclaimer that I don't do everything, all these things 100% all the time. Obviously, there's some times where I do them and some times where I don't do them. And that's exactly what I mentioned before, that a lot of these things, when I notice that I don't do them, it directly relates to my mental health and my physical well-being negatively. Okay, let's just get right into it. These are the physical and mental practices that I do in order to practice self-care. I'm gonna first start off with like physical self-care practices. Let's just make this clear. Our body is our vessel. We have to take care of it. No matter what we do, we have to take care of it, guys. We are going to be with our body our entire lives, so we have to take care of it, and we have to be actively making sure that it feels good. Things that I do that are directly related to paddling is that before I paddle, I always warm up. I used to not warm up. That is a fault on me. And I really started warming up when I got my injury, and I was talking to my physical therapist, and I'm like, I don't really warm up. And they're like, what? You don't warm up? I'm like, yeah. And when back in the day when I would say this and I would start warming up, I remember when I would warm up my shoulders would always crack, and I was not super flexible. But the more that I've been warming up, I think I've been consistently warming up before my training sessions, like a year to 2 years, year and a half, somewhere around there. I've noticed that I've gotten a lot more flexible and my mobility has improved a lot. And that's not even me working on my flexibility and mobility. That's literally just me warming up before my training sessions. It has improved my movement so much. I also make sure to stretch my muscles. With my injury, if I don't stretch after, it hurts so much. Just like all that tension just gets built up, and it never gets released unless you stretch. And sometimes I would try to like postpone my stretching or try to act like I didn't need to do it, like, ugh, I just don't want to stretch right now. I noticed and realized that if I don't stretch, I can't do anything. So I really have to stretch, and I've been starting to stretch like other parts of my body, like my arms and my shoulders and my back. I'm not super good at stretching. It's something that I have to keep on like working on and actively be thinking about. I normally just stretch my knees or just my legs because you can't really stretch your knees. But I definitely want to get into stretching the rest of my body a lot more consistently. I also try to pay a lot of attention to how my body is feeling, and I don't try to push myself. Obviously, you want to push yourself, right? But specifically, I'm talking about pushing my injury. My injury is very picky. He's a very picky guy. And I've been told several times when I talk about my injury, I'm like, oh, sometimes I can't really do this because of my injury. They're like, oh, you just got to push through it. And I have to be like, no, I can't push through it, because if I push through it, if I surpass my injury's limit, I'm going to be set back weeks, if not months. And it's happened before. It's happened where I try to ignore the feeling that I am feeling, and I just push through it. I push through the pain in the training session, and I end up not being able to walk the next day. It is so important to pay attention to our body and our limitations. I even learned that with my injury, I can not be feeling that much pain during the training session, but unknowingly to me, I would actually be pushing it past its limit, and then I would ultimately feel that after the training session. So I've learned to pick up on hints throughout the training session that kind of show like, yeah, no, you don't want to be doing this because it's going to hurt a lot when you're done. So with my injury, I've learned to become so in tune with my body, and I pay a lot of attention to it. And being an athlete, you want to make sure that your body is working at its 100%. Like, you don't want it to be hurting. You don't want to be there to be limitations. So pay attention to those things and don't ignore them, because if you ignore them, they might get worse. Practices that I do on a day-to-day basis is getting enough sleep. I love getting enough sleep during the night. I love sleeping. It's honestly, I love sleeping. I go to sleep at around like 9:30 p.m. and I wake up at 6:15 a.m. And I get so much sleep, and then I can go to bed early, and then I can wake up early, and it's so nice, and I love it. And sleep is just so important for recovery and energy levels and performance in sports. So it is so important, guys. You guys got to get your sleep. I also pay a lot of attention to my nutrition. Now, I have a really big sweet tooth, so when it comes to sweets and all that stuff, I'm not the most careful, but I do try to prioritize getting a lot of protein in. That's something that I am always actively paying attention to when I eat, is getting protein, because we need protein to build muscle, to gain strength, to do all the things that athletes need to do. We need protein. I also drink a lot of water. We are in the sun and we are in salt water all the time as paddleboarders, at least for me specifically, because I'm a saltwater paddler. I know that a lot of people train on flat water and lakes and all that stuff. But drinking a lot of water is super important because you need to stay hydrated, girly. You need to stay hydrated. You can't be not drinking water. That's not okay for you. When it comes to taking care of my body, like post paddling, I already talked about this with stretching and all that stuff and hydration, but a big thing that I found like that physically just makes me go bleh is the salt water. And I do a lot of things that rejuvenate or revitalize my body after just being in salt water. Salt water is very drying, and also with the sun you can get sunburn, and so you can your skin can peel. So I really like to exfoliate and just to get all the extra salt off, get all of the dead skin off, because even though that's nasty, it happens to everyone, guys. It happens to everyone. So yeah, exfoliating, very nice. I also moisturize because your skin gets so dry with the salt water. So moisturizing your face, your skin, and also hydrating your hair, everything is super important. I remember I'm always on the water. Keywords, on the water, not in the water, because obviously the whole goal of stand-up paddleboarding is to not fall off. And whenever I go to the hair salon, everyone knows that I paddleboard, but they're always like, oh my god, your hair is so healthy in comparison to all of the other surfers. And I'm like, yep. That's because I don't fall off. But that just kind of shows how much the water can affect your hair. So making sure it's hydrated and making sure everything is good. I also like going through with a scrubber because you can get sand in your hair, you can get sand on your scalp, and that can be itchy, and you don't want that. So take good care of your hair. And also something that I recently started doing was using hand cream. I really like using hand cream because obviously we get calluses on our hands, and I want to make sure that my hands are moisturized and hydrated just so the calluses kind of get a little bit smoother and they don't like peel off as much, because when they get hard and they have to peel off, you can like barely even use your hand. It's so bad. And then lastly, the big physical thing that I do is that I really make sure that I myself am confident in my body. For me, confidence out of the water directly affects my confidence on the water. So ways that I help with my confidence and kind of bump it up a little bit is that I have a wardrobe that suits me and suits my hobbies and flatters my body. I make sure I have good skincare, sunscreen, and salicylic acid. Those are the two main things that I really like using. Sunscreen, obviously you're in the sun all the time. I don't use sunscreen on my body, which I should probably start using a lot more frequently. But if you have sunscreen on your body and you fall, then the floor of your board will just get oily. So that's my reasoning for not wearing sunscreen. And also, obviously, a moisturizer. You always want to be moisturizing. No matter how oily your skin is, you want to have a good moisturizer. I also really enjoy wearing makeup. Now, I don't go all out with makeup. I really like to just simply accentuate the features that I already have. I've found that if I try to make my eyelashes longer, if I add foundation or try to cover like acne spots, or even like adding eyeliner sometimes, if I stop doing those things, I become a lot less confident because I no longer have them. So I very much I steer away from even like hair extensions or things that directly alternate or change something on my face, like eyelash extensions, just all those things, because I just like accentuating the features that I already have, and I feel like that is strong enough to keep my confidence up. Simple things like concealer, highlighter, blush, all those things. I love doing those things so much, and it's also really fun to experiment with stuff too. But anyways, that is all for the physical things. Now I want to go through the mental things. Like I said earlier, your mental health is arguably the most important thing when it comes to training as an athlete, and having a bad mental health is not good. No bueno, amigo. I myself am very open about my mental health because it is something that I am constantly struggling with, and something that not that many people talk about, and yet everyone deals with it. So with me being really in tune with my mental health, there's a lot of practices that I do to ensure that my mental health is a lot better, or is just like constantly improving. Obviously, there's going to be good days, there's going to be bad days. Trust me, everyone goes through that, but these are things that I like to do, that when I'm having a bad day, I can kind of just reel it back in and kind of understand what I'm feeling, or just all in all, putting yourself in situations that have a positive influence on you rather than a negative one. Again, like I said before, also having a bad mental health directly relates to my paddleboarding. So these are things that I do that help me a lot. A big thing is that when I'm off the water, I try to find other things to grab my attention, whether that be a hobby or just another activity. If you are constantly thinking about the sport that you're practicing, it's so bad, because you're not giving yourself a mental break from the weight of the sport that you're practicing. So finding a different hobby, or even reading books, anything. I personally love content creation. I love making YouTube videos. and I also like reading. There's so many things that I can do outside of paddleboarding that doesn't relate to it at all. And so that gives me that mental break and puts my attention towards something else. Another thing that I like to do is journaling. Now, I have a journal. I'm on my third journal right now. And I personally only journal kind of when I'm going through like a bad mental health phase. So I haven't really been journaling recently, which is actually really good. It feels really nice. Like I want to journal, but I also don't feel the need to journal, which is it's always amazing. It's always nice when that happens. It's good and bad for me. Like I said before, because I like journaling, but I also know that I have nothing to talk about if I were to journal. How I like to explain journaling is essentially grabbing the weighted thoughts that are in your mind and putting them on paper so that the paper carries the burden and you don't. It's so good writing things down so that you can also get even a different perspective on what you are feeling, because emotions and feelings pop up while you are writing that you otherwise wouldn't have thought of had you not written anything down. So journaling is very important, and I really like journaling. It's very nice. Another thing is surrounding yourself with positive people. If you surround yourself with people that have a negative or a toxic relationship with the sport they're practicing, or even with their nutrition or their body, you are subconsciously attaching those feelings and emotions to yourself. So if there is someone that is constantly negatively talks about their body, you are going to start negatively talking about your body. If you are surrounding yourself with someone who always talks negatively about other paddlers, then you are going to subconsciously start thinking about other paddlers in a negative view. You need to surround yourself with positive people because we need more positivity in the world of sports. We can't be bashing each other, and we can't be talking negatively about each other. And we also need to keep to ourselves. Keep to yourself. Don't talk about other people. Just don't. The last thing that I do to help my mental health and practice mental self-care is constantly mixing things up when it comes to stand-up paddleboarding. I am not a repetitive person. There's some things that I do that are like habits, like doing my skincare and maybe in reading a book in the morning and drinking my coffee in the morning. But when it comes to exercise and all those things, that is something that I have to constantly be mixing things up because I get bored if I'm doing the exact same thing every single day, or if I'm even doing just like a mix of different things every week. It'll get to a point where I'm just bored and lazy and I need to switch things up, because if I don't switch things up, I am not going to continue doing it. So mixing things up is super important for me, and it is something that I need to constantly be doing in order to continue improving in my sport. Okay, that is all for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you found something that maybe you want to start trying, and I hope it kind of gives you a perspective into how I take care of myself in the world of sports, because sports can be hard. They can be heavy on you. You are literally constantly pushing your body and your mind to its limit every single day. So we need to always be taking care of ourselves, because it'll get to a point where we break, and we do not want that. We don't want that. We want to continue growing. We don't want to lose our love for the sport. We don't want to get an injury. So we have to always be taking care of ourselves. And these are the ways that I take care of myself. That is all for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, you can like, or you can leave a review, or you can comment and subscribe if you're on YouTube. And I will catch you guys next week. Bye-bye.